Welcome to MSP Voice, the weekly show for MSPs by MSPs. Brought to you by Cloudberry, the #1 cross-platform cloud backup. Learn more at cloudberrylab.com. This is MSP Voice. Hello and welcome to MSP Voice. This is episode number 44. Got Joshua Liberman up today for the interview out of Albuquerque. Great interview. He talks in detail about some of the security stuff that he's using to help keep his customers protected, and has some unbelievable uptimes for his customers. So definitely check that out. Some housekeeping here before we start. MSPvoice.com is your source for all things MSP Voice. Actually, if you register your name and email, you'll get a notification each time there's a new blog post up there, a new episode gets released. You'll be notified via email. So definitely check that out. We've got past episodes on there. We've got our webinars on there. So a lot of great resources there on mspvoice.com. And also, if you'd like to be a guest author on MSP Voice, just let us know. We'd be happy to have you on as a guest author. So with that being said, let's jump into a couple articles this week. In case you haven't heard, Wipro was breached. So, Wipro, if you're not familiar, they're a huge solution provider, outsourcing out of India. Almost every large company that I've ever been to is using Wipro services in some form or another. So definitely big, definitely a breach, and it's been in the news. And it's just, again, to reinforce the fact that as service providers, solutions providers, MSPs, you're definitely a target. So you want to make sure that you've got things locked down. You're keeping tabs on your security because you are the entry point to your customers. So you get hacked, you will probably lose your customers. So definitely something to always keep top of mind to make sure that we are all being security focused. Next up is, I found this one interesting, FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. I think that's what it stands for. But they say MSPs need clear business continuity contracts. So FDIC here in the U.S., they essentially insure the banks, financial institutions, and they went through and looked at a number of different contracts, and this applies to institutions under $1 billion in total assets because that's what they insure. But they need tighter contracts with their technology solution providers, including managed services. If there's gaps in the deals, financial institutions may need to make additional arrangements to manage their own business continuity. And if contracts between the two don't clearly spell out each party's rights or responsibility, the onus still falls on the financial institution to manage their own business continuity and incident response. So interesting article here. They give some tips and tricks for what you need to have, some best practices. If you're dealing with financial institutions, definitely check this out. It's I think it's a good practice to always look and make sure that the contracts between you and your customers are rock solid, and that everyone understands what their responsibilities are. Next up is one from Reddit. Here we've got someone's asking, what's the best log analysis tool? And this actually goes into a part of the discussion that I had with Joshua in the interview coming up. And he actually recommended a couple of different tools. One of them gets a mention here on this post. But essentially, what are you guys using to go through and dig through all these logs? So this person here says he's fairly small, but growing. He's about 50 managed clients. So he's looking for something with a low cost of entry that can scale with me. I don't care whether it's self-hosted or cloud-based. So there's some good ideas here. Looks like Graylog, which is open source, has gotten a lot of people saying Graylog is excellent. I've never used it. I'm not endorsing anything, but just wanted to kind of put this out there. If you guys have something that you like to use, go ahead and add it to this thread. Or if you're in the market, definitely check out what other people are saying about some of these other solutions. And finally, another popular topic on the podcast when I ask people about technology is artificial intelligence. It comes up quite a bit that people are either excited about AI or freaked out about it. And so this one it pops up every once in a while. But what do you think in terms of AI for MSPs? And are you using AI today? A couple of people talk about how it's there's a couple of different ways of going about it. It's definitely the future. But right now, enterprises, they're targeting enterprises because they have a lot of money and they can pay for it. And the challenge is delivering AI, automation, et cetera, that works well and do it affordably for MSPs at scale. So that's something. Somebody else recommends says that AI is such an overused term. Most of them don't use learning neural networks. They can go through a ton of logs and kind of make some recommendations, but is that AI or not? So I think it's an interesting thing in this space that we need to keep track of, and hopefully it's not going to take away our jobs as MSPs, but anything that can help make our jobs easier, I think is going to be great, and of course do it at an affordable price. So that's it for our articles this week. I'm going to leave you now with the interview, and have a great day. Hello and welcome. Today I'm pleased to be joined by Joshua Liberman out of Net Sciences Inc. out of New Mexico. Is that correct?
Yes, Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Okay, great. Joshua, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I'll start with the business. 28 years around in the field, 23 years as Net Sciences, or 24th year now. We're a small MSP in New Mexico. We service businesses typically in the 5 to 50 seat range, but that doesn't really distinguish us. We support architectural CAD and engineering.
Okay.
And we mostly work with these small businesses because we have a state that's 97% of all businesses have 20 or less employees. And
Gotcha.
100 seats, you're in the top 1% here. So we do service small business, but it's kind of like saying that a fish swims in water. That's where we are. We are very focused on security. I promise to say something that everybody doesn't already know, but not yet. We're focused on security, but more than most MSPs. We have a broad range of offerings, and I'm going to talk a little later, I hope, about some newer stuff that we're just dabbling in. Do you want names of vendors mentioned or not?
Yeah, no, that's fine. It doesn't matter.
I'm comfortable with those whom I'm comfortable with. So, no disparagement. We'll stick with the folks we like.
Okay, no problems there. So how did you get in? How did you get into this business? I mean, to become an MSP, was it a long road? Was it an easy road?
Yeah, it was completely sideways. I've had people say, "Oh, I came into the back door." There wasn't even a door. In the early '80s, I was in Bakersfield because I'd gone out to California to work in the oil fields at a gas fractionation plant, which had an explosion the night before I got there.
Oh.
People said, "Oh, bad luck, you lost your job." Not really bad luck. It happened the night before I got there. So I didn't have work. I had to do something.
Mm-hmm.
I spent 3 months walking around the city in the middle of the summer doing, odd laboring type stuff, and wandered into a Manpower where I was waiting for yet another job, either tarring roofs or painting reflective paint at the bottom of a pool at 110 degrees, neither of which appealed to me, and they were unpacking an IBM PC. I think it was XT. This would have been September, October of 1981.
Okay.
So my choice was the roof, 110 degrees, $8 an hour, or air conditioning, women around me, $10. So I said, I can work that. And a couple days later, it was true. They put me in a room with the parts, and I figured it out, got it going, got it booting, figured out what a diskette was, et cetera, started playing. And by the end of that year, I had assembled and put together half a dozen to a dozen small business PC setups.
Okay.
No networking yet, but over time, in the next few years, I did a lot of technical writing and editing, ended up sitting in front of a lot of mini computer weighing, for the most part, setups, some of that. Later in the 80s, I taught myself Fantastic, and by the end of the 80s, I had set up several networks and was doing that for a string of different temp job type things.
Okay.
I finally realized at some point I'd really like to get paid for what I'm doing rather than paid to be a secretary or a writer. I was actually, or editor, I was doing this. And I made that stretch. It was kind of abortive, a few efforts. And then 1990, ended up being the system manager for a law firm, the biggest one in our state at the time, making their migration from weighing mini computers to PCs.
Okay.
I'm going to skip a lot of sordid details. But 5.5 years later, when I was out of debt from years and years of school, I decided that it was time to get out of the Department of Energy where I was and go out on my own. And that happened. I think I slept the month of October and read November December about business, law, and tech, and started Net Sciences day after Christmas of '95.
Wow.
And made my first sale a week later, a box of backup exec, and it was to the law firm that I used to work for. To go to a guy who has a competitive firm here in Albuquerque who had filled my position there at the law firm. It's a small town here. So that was a very long road into it, but at that point we were a system integrator, hardware builder, and did desktop support. Over the next 4 years, migrated from mostly Lantastic and Novell networks to Microsoft. By about 2000, I believe I stopped doing Novell with rare exception, and we've been on the Microsoft, I don't know if it's highway, but we've been on the Microsoft trail for about 19 years.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. That's, interesting history. You go out for one job and you kind of fall into this computer gig.
I think that 80% of the people standing on the other side of that counter would have pretended to know how to connect a PC if they had been roofing or painting pools in Bakersfield that summer.
Yeah.
It was a no-brainer to me. As far as MSP stuff, we've been doing it with a great deal of verve for about 9 years.
Okay.
In 2002, though I wasn't much of a marketer, I did figure out we wanted proactive experience, so we were stringing together various utilities like WhatsUp Gold and Event Log Monitor and some manual efforts, and we were doing monitoring and patching and alerting without knowing to call it that. As a matter of fact, I believe we called it proactive services because I'm such a gifted marketer. So that was 02 to 2010, at which point I really dove in, bought the tools, and here we are.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, it's great because, before the platforms came out, the PSAs and the RMMs and all that kind of stuff that people use today, you had to string some stuff together and do it yourself. But, so you were kind of doing it before you knew what it was called.
I surely didn't know the term before 2009, and I didn't have the belief that we could make that transition until about 2010. And I learned to do that. I mean, when that transition happened, the way I learned to skydive, somebody kicked me out the window. I did have a parachute, but that is literally how I learned to skydive and many other things. So essentially what I did is convert my business to where we wouldn't work with anyone who didn't at least do monitoring, patching, and alerting with us, which back then, if I remember right, could be as little as $250, $300 a month. But that still cost us 60% of our clientele in that first year. And maybe 40% of our seats, but 60% of our client base. They just wouldn't make such a transition. And there are similar stories, if not so extreme, with people all over the country. We know what it's like. Many businesses to this day are simply never going to spend money until it's too late.
Yep. So you mentioned, you've got quite a focus on security. There at Net Sciences. What kind of tools? What's your focus there, and how's that practice work? I guess.
The simplest answer to that, because there's so many tools and so many ways to manage them. We came up with 3 bundles or packages. We have a low-end package that, like everybody, has an RMM provided alerting, monitoring, and patching system. We also throw in there advanced endpoint protection, in our case through Cylance, with their Protect and Optics packages, which I find to be a genuine leap above anything that's not next gen like that.
Okay.
Also on that base package is a DNS filtering package, or DNS filter. We include email filtering through Mail Protector. We do, KnowBe4 at the moment is the people who are providing our end user training. And because I'm not in my office in front of my paperwork, I'm skipping one, but there are 6 components to that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the patching is a separate component. So those 6 components roll together into our basic security package, which is included in our silver plan. Our silver plan includes no remote help desk, nothing beyond those automated services, very inexpensive, but it does allow folks to reach out and get support from us remotely. We do have a Sonic wall at every site, so we have both the RMM remote capability and a carefully regulated site-to-site VPN. We have a lot more in the background going on, and at that level, those folks can get billing by the 10th of the hour and interact with us Monday through Friday, 8 to 5.
Okay.
Next step up takes you to the gold package, which includes remote help desk and includes also access to, but not flat rated, out of hours support. So if they have need outside Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, they can reach us. And it includes what we call our advanced security package, which adds internal vulnerability scanning, external vulnerability scanning, new device alerting, and firewall log reading analysis and alerting.
Okay.
And we finally step up to the top package, the platinum package, which is also associated with our highest level of security services, known as the comprehensive plan. And that adds yet more things. I won't detail all of them, but amongst our device encryption, let's see, two-factor authentication, mobile device management, and more. We have a la carte things that we can add, like mail encryption and archiving, and many other things. But for the most part, we sell packages. It's very rare.
Okay.
It sounds complicated. It all fits on one page and one chart. Well, 2 pages, 1 page of words and 1 page of one chart.
Yeah.
Everybody what we can do and what it costs, because you may have heard the phrase before, there's no such thing as a confused buyer. If I confuse people here, and it's anybody in this business understands that what we think is simple is 300 words past what most people are going to read.
Yeah.
The reality is, if I can't place it in a paragraph, and I'll make an oblique reference here and sprinkle that with first names that catch their attention, they're not going to get through that paragraph.
Yeah.
You really have to keep their attention. You have to keep it simple. So we package things in these plans. You will occasionally throw in extra things. For example, we're going to work in SaaS backup for Office 365. We have 80% of our seats in the cloud with O365 now, so that really need it. But our focus is keeping them stable. And I think our biggest priority is the silence of the lambs. We got 4 out-of-hours calls last year. 3 of them went to me. We're on a rotating basis. And actually, one was only a real problem. User confusion is more common. We had 1 actual failure last year. And I used to put a counter on our website that counted the days since the last day of downtime at one of our managed sites. Nobody believed us. So I can tell you, I all the time took people saying that's impossible. It is true that it was November of 1999, the last time we had a site that was down for a day without planning. And we haven't had an hour of outage, with one exception, user inflicted, self-inflicted. We haven't had 1 hour of outage, unplanned outage on a network since 2009, since we went to this.
Wow, that's great.
That's what we're all about. Yeah, I mean, even though I do work a lot and travel a lot, I don't live in fear, and I don't have trouble falling or staying asleep. Actually, but it's a wonderful place to be, and that's where we want to stay.
Okay. Yeah. No, before we started here, we were talking a little bit, and you mentioned something about some new security services that are coming down, where it's finally becoming affordable for MSPs and small businesses. Can you detail that a little bit, or you want to?
Sure. I did refer to them. They're part of that second plan, that advanced security plan. One is an internal vulnerability scanning service that's delivered by means of a device. So I'm going to mention some names. ITI produces a device. They're out of upstate New York. They produce a device called Nodeware. It's available as either a virtualized service or a small NUC type, 4-inch square delivered box. That is an internal scanning device that looks for vulnerabilities, not just missing patches, but things like default username and passwords on devices.
Okay.
Old versions of CIFS or SMB or other sharing protocols. Things that you'll overlook. You can patch the hell out of things. That doesn't mean that patching doesn't necessarily remove deprecated, yes. Deprecated facilities on that network. So it'll find things like that you don't find otherwise. It can talk to most any device on your network. They're going through a transition to a new interface, which we hear will be much better. It's a little bit complicated to work with. It's probably not a great end user facing thing, but it's it's there for you.
Yeah.
It is an extraordinarily good service, and it is extraordinarily cheap. Somewhere in the low 200s buys you the box, and per subnet you pay $29 a month, which is crazy good.
Yeah.
Even if you have a multi-subnet site, as you should if you have any really secure sites, for less than $100 at your cost, you can get all this coverage. For our small networks with a single subnet, it's fabulous. So we just started rolling that out. And I did skip one other super cool item here. This box will alert you, or their service will alert you of any new MAC address on your network. So
Oh,
somebody sneaks in a wireless access point, that's happened to us.
yeah.
Somebody comes in there with an unpatched machine, that's happened to us,
Hmm.
et cetera, et cetera. If there's a device with a MAC address and it hits that monitored subnet, you get an instant. A minute later, you get an alert.
Okay.
That's a great conversation starter. To them, it's a convenience to throw something on a network. To us,
Yeah.
it's a potential vulnerability.
Yeah.
So this is what we find out first.
Yeah.
So that's a great advantage of that product and service. The second thing is, I'm going to say this like it's great, wonderful new stuff. There are probably listeners out there who are going to chuckle because they've been doing this for 5 years. We were not doing log analysis and reporting. We have a SOC or SIM relationship. I couldn't find somebody that would work with us. We want to start easy for our small sites and read just firewall logs. To my mind, even though it is true that attacks happen at endpoints, for the most part, the ingress is through the firewall.
Yeah.
So we work with a different company out of Fort Lauderdale called Vijilan, Vijilan, and they're a SOC and SIM, and they offer very sophisticated services at very good prices, including reading all logs on your network. Easy. Desktop logs, server logs, switches, routers, firewalls at very reasonable prices. We're engaging with them at the moment for firewall log analysis and reporting, alerting.
Okay.
So we tend to engage much more fully as we develop security awareness with our clientele. Despite what you hear in at the shows from vendors, security awareness is not very great. We still have a lot of sites that really are clueless. We are literally in the second week of onboarding a previous customer who dropped us 2 years ago because they figured out at some point they were spending money every month. And that scared them. They let us go. They brought us back a couple of weeks ago, and they were the most thoroughly penetrated site I have ever seen.
Wow.
7 endpoints and a server. We've caught thousands of penetrations. When we went out there to start our job, we were getting logged out by a remote administrator from
Oh, geez.
They had let the firewall services lapse. They had no AV. They had no patching. And this list goes on. And they were on fire at a level I have just never seen.
Wow.
We were referring to them as doom. They were, we've never seen anything like it. And actually, I've saved a whole bunch of logs from the server and desktops to share with the guys at Solutions Granted who provide our silence to us. I can't say enough about Solutions Granted. And they also offer a SOC service, by the way. But this place is amazing, and we are learning about remediation at a level we've never had to. So far, we've replaced a server and a desktop. Ultimately, we're probably going to burn down everything and reinstall it or replace it. But it has been a learning journey for us.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to make a perfect case study for what not to do.
You always hear about these case studies, these success stories.
Yeah.
We had a failure story for Dado. I had 2 success stories, but we had a site that ignored us because they had a RAID array. That's backup. And amazingly enough, one of the guys decided he was going to show off his RAID array to one of his buddies, and he just popped, and it's a RAID 6 array. Popped the drive out to show him, but he hadn't read his email that day. He already had a rebuild in progress.
Oh.
He popped the second drive out, and that was the end of that. This is a guy who refused our placement of a Dado the month before. So we do wonderful failure stories. Hopefully these guys will develop into a success story. They're running. They're alive.
Yeah.
In the background, I can connect to work, and I can see they've only sent 2 or 3 emails today. That's actually not so bad. Anyway, it's very funny. Truly funny. What I want to get at, let me finish up the answer, long answer to your question. The ability or the need to read these logs is far greater than it used to be. 5 and 10 years ago, everything was automated. It was simple port scans, maybe OS or device fingerprinting, and some really basic stuff. But now we have blended attacks that they use everything from phishing or spear phishing, social media generator gathered data, blended with these attacks that are essentially APTs or advanced persistence attacks at these sites. So they're no longer just blind attacks. Even smaller businesses are being targeted for any number of reasons, either actually for data harvesting or frequently just for compromise for other purposes. So without anybody reading those logs, it's scary.
Yeah.
And there are amazingly interesting things that happen. when we turned our service on a couple of years back in our own shop, a couple months went by, we didn't get a single alert to anything. The reports, that was it. One day I brought my internet radio in from home, our radio that picks up internet radio stations.
Yeah.
I plugged it in, didn't think about it. It was a weekend. On Monday, I noticed that there was a heck of a lot of alerts. There was a device inside my network that was sending data to a Chinese IP address. And later we found out encrypted data. It was my radio.
Wow.
To this day, I don't know what that involved. I do know that I sold that on eBay, but that was it's a trivial example, but it is amazing what happens that you don't know. And no matter how good you are as a firewall jockey, nobody's reading their own logs. Reading firewall logs for a 5 or 10 user network could occupy somebody who's an expert 24 hours a day for at least 40 hours a week, realistically. On top of that, first you have to parse the log, and before that you have to output the log, or the log, parse the log. It's just not a human adventure.
Yeah.
It really is not something you should be doing. So these SOCs, SIMs, SOARs, all the different acronyms for these service places, they actually run these through filters that are machine learning based that will identify actually important details in the noise. I'm sure they drop more than 3 nines worth of the data, but they do identify attacks. Those go to human eyes, and further work gets done.
Yeah.
It's an amazingly powerful thing. And on top of all that, if you have any kind of regulatorily covered organization, not doing this is crazy. Even if you don't ever block a single attack, if there's any kind of penetration or breach or legal exposure to these companies, having no logs is not a good place to start when you get to court.
Definitely.
So
Got to have it.
These services are down to the point where you can charge about $100 to read firewall logs. With the other service I mentioned, we charge about $100 to read scans. And together they're profitable. And they generate, on our low-end plans where it's not flat rate billable work, higher end plans, we have to be careful. We have to put them out there, and we end up with a network that's so much better than we started out with, which is embarrassing. We think we're doing fantastic work, and we find out we missed 3 or 4 things. These devices are great. They're just wonderful. So those are the two, to us, new things.
Yeah.
One pretty new to the industry. And of course, log reading is not new, but it might be new to the SMB space.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too, you were talking about attacks, and they're attacking small businesses, but and I'm assuming you have these types of monitoring on your own systems too, because you are an entry point into those small businesses, and we've heard about attacks at MSPs. I'm assuming so. I'm hoping you've obviously protected yourselves.
So everything we sell, we use.
So,
period. I can't really think of anything, to the exception of HP chassis switches with a couple of 100 ports. Everything we sell, we use. We have a high-end firewall. We use all the services that we sell. We're actually a system builder. We build our own machines, our own servers for 28 years. So yes, of course, we're eating our own dog food, as they like to say. And we are very aware of the fact that our vigilance is critical, because if we don't do that, we are the entry point to them. My plans have changed dramatically.
Yeah.
I do intend to actually survive the industry and retire at some point. Honestly, I meet people who tell me, their entire retirement plan is the sale of their small business. And these are the same people that don't do backup and don't have security level they need. And I explain to them, look, I have a small business. I'm exactly like many of our businesses. Ours is probably slightly smaller in employee count and medium size in revenue across our base. So I have the same plans with the same ideas. And if we do it, they should. So yes, we use it. Yes, we sell it. Yes, we can vouch for it. Really, everybody that I've mentioned by name are people are offerings that we've vetted, tested, and run for the most part for years. In the case of these new services, just a year or 2. And I think they're bang for the buck and best of breed solutions. And one of the things I've learned over the years is, as we've grown in sophistication and size, is that best of breed is worth it. I used to think that dealing with less vendors was more important than best of breed. I've changed my mind over time. We have a lot more vendor relationships than I wish I had to manage, but the reality is, that's where it has to be.
Okay. Yeah. And, I also know you're a pretty active member of ASCII as well. We've met at a couple of different ASCII conferences.
Yeah, I'm on their advisory board or executive.
Okay.
Which executive advisory board.
Yeah.
I have been a member nominally since '96, and I say it that way because I joined it, did nothing with it. I got some sort of discount by joining. Yeah. But years and years I did nothing with it. Right around 2010, which is a really pivotal year for me because I did a lot of things. I read about 50 books that year on business management, and I've continued to go to 20 shows a year ever since then.
Wow.
So for many years, I went to all the ASCII shows. I typically go to about half now. Pro, many other vendors, vendor shows.
Yep.
All across the industry. I try to get my finger on all the pulses of all these different sources. I'm also a little more deeply involved in the industry because I both speak and do photography at events.
Yep.
So when I say 20 events, 10 of them I'm working at, 10 of them I'm not.
Okay.
But I'm there, and I'm either producing or absorbing information in the industry. And that's another thing that I see in small businesses. They're too insular. They're not tied in. ASCII is a phenomenal group for a lot of reasons, and there's about, I think, 1,300 members that can vouch for that around North America. And I think it's a phenomenal resource. The shows that Channel Pro puts on are absolutely wonderful as well. Can I pitch somebody's new show real quick?
Sure.
So on the 26th, 27th, 28th of this month, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, in Chicago downtown, there's a show called IT Owner's Compass. Lori's show, Lori Tiss and I. It is only their second year that I remember. One of the reasons I'm plugging it is I'll be speaking there.
Okay.
Workshop there. Carl Palachuk is keynoting, so he's a industry known. We'll call him raconteur and bon vivant. I don't think he likes that. He'll be keynoting. It's a show that's a lot like the ones we mentioned through ASCII and Channel Pro, but it is a 2 to 2.5 day show. Fabulous information. ITO Compass. If you're interested, and if anybody on this wants to follow up with me before then, they can reach out to me and get a discount. It's a $299 2.5 day show. All meals are included, and we can get you a discount on that. Anyway, the shows are really important. They expose you to vendors, technologies, and probably most importantly, peers.
Yeah.
What you can learn from them, because no matter how good you are, there are things you don't know. And no matter how good you are at something, there are people better at it. And there are even times when you learn what to let go. And you learn about peer-to-peer management, employee management. You learn about vendor management, which you know something about. So I highly recommend that. That is one of the mistakes I made early on. And by the way, I'm speaking in IT Owner's Compass on what I would do if I started my MSP tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
So starting what it would be like to be a 27-year-old that looked like he was 59.
Well, I have one of my questions I usually ask is what advice do you have for someone starting out? But I'm guessing you have probably a 30 to 60-minute presentation on that. So
I do, but I can tell you that there's really, really quickly treat it like a business. I did it first.
Okay.
Market and learn how to outsource what you can't do.
Yeah.
Get involved in the industry events and interact with peers. Absolutely. Think more about best of breed than ease of use. Invest now, reap later. And probably the single most important thing I've learned is how to choose. Business isn't about going to work for just anybody. All right. That's just a whole different kind of encounter. Business is about finding complementary partners to work with. You really are, in the best case scenario, partnering with your clientele. You're not finding customers, you're partnering with clients. And if I had known that earlier, I would have probably still looked 49 years old. I don't know if it'd be a bigger business, but I would look there.
Yeah. Well, we're getting close to the end here, and I have my rapid fire round, which is I do with all the guests.
Okay.
So it's 6 questions. Pretty easy. You just don't think about it too much. Just whichever answer is best for you. Are you ready?
I am, and by the way, my wife would point out to you that I never think about anything too much.
Okay. All right. First up, Apple or Android?
For me, Android, because I think more like that.
Okay.
I don't really find virtually any Apple products to be intuitive or easy to use.
Yeah. All right.
There they are. I just haven't seen them.
All right. So next one, Mac, Linux, or Windows?
For me, Windows, because we eat our own dog food, and if I
Mhm.
was trying to make a living supporting Linux, I would have 1% of the market to work with. And if I make a living supporting Mac, I would have to grow a mustache, stop answering the phone, and 2-week vacations with all my customers' gears locked in the shop.
Okay. Cloud services, Amazon, Azure, Google, or someone else?
In the short run, someone else, whenever you have that
Okay.
option. I'm a shop local, shop at the co-op kind of guy,
Mm-hmm.
a small restaurant. Unless you feel that you're going to grow to a size in the tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, you're not going to be a blip on the radar of these bigger players, and I think that matters. Having said that, going back to the fish and water analogy, you're going to be involved. Azure is going to happen.
Yeah.
Period. There are I mean, even your end users are going to come to you about Azure. To a lesser extent, that's true of Google, but somewhat true. Certainly, their apps and their email. And Amazon is probably going to happen to you too. But for now, the answer is other.
Okay. Backups, local, cloud, or both?
Both, absolutely, 100%.
Okay. Should you always virtualize, yes or no?
I used to say yes. I'm going to say no for a very specific reason. The reason
Okay.
yes was there, even for a 4-user standalone server with just a DC, was recovery was so much easier. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
my server is a file that you can take and throw on another server.
Yeah.
We're 100% data shop, right? I'm sorry, we're about a 97% data shop. We have one site, not running a data. That takes the recovery equation or recovery issue out of the equation. At that point, you have instant failover, business continuity, and even disaster recovery. Without that, there are sites that aren't going to grow to spin up a second server, that aren't going to benefit from this, and that will benefit from less expensive equipment and less expensive. Now, when I say less expensive, that 7-user site has a $5,000 server.
Yeah.
It's cheap. But
Yeah.
we didn't virtualize it. We put Server Essentials out there. We
Mm-hmm.
built it on a couple of arrays of SSDs or 364 gig at it. It's a DC and to some extent an app server, but we didn't need the virtualization. It gives us extra stuff to manage and extra stuff to secure and harden
Yeah.
and watch. And I couldn't make that argument. I would say that 2/3 of the time we virtualize things, if there's any chance, they're going to outgrow a single server. As you move more and more into the cloud, which in more bandwidth gifted areas,
Yep.
more frequently than here, then I think there'll probably be less immediate need. There's a lot of $1,500 DC only machines there with local file.
Yeah.
So the longer run, I don't know. But right now, yeah, it could be either way.
Okay. And finally, which is worse, printer support or vendor cold calls?
I'm not aware of printer support. Do you get printer? So you mean, is it worse to do printer support?
Yeah, what's worse, printer support or getting a vendor cold call?
Oh, printer support. Yeah, I
Okay.
don't mind vendor cold calls. I can shoot the breeze with anybody, and if it gets ugly, we have a number to shunt them to. But yeah, no, printer support is immensely difficult. We're very lucky to say that there's so little print at our sites.
Yeah.
It amazes me how little physical output our sites do and how old and well supported their printers are. If we have a median age of a server, it's probably 4 years. If we have a desktop age, it's probably 3 to 5 years. If we have a median printer age, it's probably approaching 15. They buy workhorse HPs and get them rebuilt until they burst into flames. That can be 2 million pages. So we virtually never do printer support.
Okay.
Yet it's worse.
Most people say that. So before we take off, any last bits of wisdom you'd like to give to our listeners before we go?
At 28.5 years of this, it's a difficult business. I mean, the buck always stops with us. It doesn't matter if it's a vendor or manufacturer or software publisher or client or anybody else. It's our problem. And keep that in mind. Whatever anytime you give the option to one of your clients or customers to do the wrong thing, there's a pretty high probability they will.
Yeah.
And you need to find a way to structure your offerings so that they really can't. So our bottom level offering, if you come in and bring in a small Datto S3X1 and take that together, a 5-user site still spends $500 a month. That might be a hard sell to people, but having a site get penetrated and beat the crap that you're managing for $250 a month is going to be a harder sell to get paid for.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense to take those risks, but it does mean that you have to walk away from a lot of folks.
Yep. Okay.
All right.
Well, great. Joshua, thank you so much. Appreciate the time today. And I'm sure I'll see you at another ASCII event probably here fairly soon.
Yeah, we'll be out there somewhere. I'm going to miss Bethesda because it butts up against another job that I'm doing.
Yeah, I won't be there either. So.
I don't know about Charlotte yet, but I'll see you out there for sure.
Okay.
Between ASCII Channel Pro and every other player out there, we'll see you somewhere.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.